This is a Musclecat Media production. Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're coming to you a special little World Cup episode of Baseball Expats. Eric Ballnar, Andrew Reynolds joining you. Eric covering the Under-12 World Cup. I'm talking to myself in the third person again. I can because the Blue Jays are that good. But Australia playing in it, so that maneuvers me to watching this tournament. And Andrew Reynolds is the voice of it, calling all the main diamond action for WBSC on GameTime.sport, all the English feed. You are coming from Taiwan, from the Under-12 World Cup, and that is what we're going to talk about today. Rolsey, set the stage. What have you been doing in Taiwan before we get into the rundown of what's happening today?
Well, mission A when I got to Taiwan was to recover from the previous 6 weeks of my life, which was always going to be an issue, but somehow I was able to make it to Taiwan in one piece. But no, man, I know I've talked about it in the lead up to this tournament. I love this place. I love how passionate they are about baseball. I love this tournament. Look, the 4 games that I've gotten to call probably haven't been the best, and we'll touch on that a little bit, that I think maybe the top end of town in this tournament is probably the gulf between the top end of town and the bottom end of town, being that the best teams and probably some of the lower end teams, the gulf is probably wider than it's been. What I think that does do is set us up for some exciting baseball, maybe toward the back end of the tournament. I've got a game today that I think probably will be quite exciting, but it's really just the atmosphere and the allure around this tournament, and the fact that, you know, the WBSC is the only international federation that puts on a World Cup for the under-12 age group, and there's a reason for that, right? Because the talent is good enough to warrant doing it. So I always look forward to this. I mean, it's been since 2019 since I was able to do it. They didn't travel anybody from outside of Taiwan to cover this tournament, you know, sort of post-COVID, just because of some of the logistics involved. So yeah, really stoked to get involved. It's been fun to rip back in, but yeah, I hope certainly that the competitiveness of the games that particularly that I get to call raises in the next couple of days, and I know it will.
So we're going to keep this episode really, really simple, Rolsey, and I love that we've got you who've been watching all the games. It's literally your job to keep on pulse of it here, but we're going to let you know what the tournament is, where things stand, how to follow and watch, and then you and I are just going to trade a couple takeaways that we've seen from the first 2 days. So I'll get the ball rolling here. This is a 12-team tournament, 2 groups of 6, and the way that this tournament works is that the top 3 teams from each of those groups, just like your typical pool play in any international tournament, the top 3 teams advance to what's called a super round. So it doesn't really go to a knockout stage like you get with other international sports and codes. So if you finish top 3 in Pool A, you advance to the super round with the top 3 teams of Pool B. Now, those records carry over against the teams that you played against already in Pool A. So let's just use a simple example. Let's just say Japan goes through 5-0 in Pool A. They beat all of their 5 teams. They would go through with a record of just 2-0 because they also beat the other 2 teams that went through. If Germany gets through and they lost to Japan but beat Korea, let's say, they would go through with a record of 1-1. And then from there, they complete another round of group stage, and then you have a gold medal and bronze medal showdown. You can get the whole rundown at WBC.org, and that's where I recommend to go to get your standings, your stats, everything, because when you're listening to this, it's a fast-moving tournament, and things are going to be changing quickly. But Rolsey, first, just a comment on the format of how WBSC works those tournaments, because we're going to be doing the same thing for the Under-18 World Cup in a month. Do you like the format that WBC rolls out? It's different than other world codes.
I do, actually. This is a conversation that I had with several people back in 2017, which is the first time I covered one of these tournaments, that I actually think the fairness of it is better, and it suits baseball more, right? It's not like soccer where you can go to a quarterfinal, semifinal, final sort of a setup. It's probably not fair to judge a team on a single day's performance, right? So it's very baseball that it almost feels series-like. So you almost have this opening series, and then you have sort of the semifinal series when you get to play those 3 teams in the super round. So you can drop a game, you can drop your last game and still play for a gold medal, and I think it suits baseball. Because what it does is the cream always rises to the top, and it means that you get some of those really good matchups, maybe in the group stage, maybe in the super round, but it doesn't dissuade the tournament from then going in that direction for a gold medal. In my opinion, you always get the two best teams at the end of the 10 days that play for the gold medal. So if that's what you rate a tournament on, it's fairness. Everybody gets a crack. Everybody gets their opportunity. And in large part, are the best two teams there when the whips are cracking at the end of the tournament. I don't remember a tournament where we said, oh, this team's lucky to be in the gold medal game in a WBSC event. I don't remember that ever happening because it's about the body of work. And you face the best teams. You're always going to face the best teams in the lead up to the tournament. Think about a tennis tournament, right? Where a guy may get a golden passage because all the top seeds have gone down. They may get to a semifinal and really have played nobody. There's no way for that to happen in this format. So I have always really enjoyed it. The Premier 12 even sort of went to more of this underage tournament style bracket last year, where it was just two pools, and the top two teams from each of those pools went to the super round, whereas in the previous Premier 12, back in 2019, it was three pools, and then they took the top two from each. So it's almost like the senior competition, the main senior competition of the WBSC, has taken a page out of these underage events, saying that, look, this is the way to get the cream to rise to the top and make sure that we've got the best teams there when it matters most. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this format.
Now, what this does mean, though, for managers, and what I love about this, because I agree with you, it's a great format for baseball. And we know that pitchers can be the great equalizer, right? Like, you might have a team that can't get a hit, but if you have the best pitcher in the tournament, it probably means you're going to win one of those games, right? Now, if it was, let's say, the top four teams from the group advance to a quarterfinal where one plays four, two plays three, kind of like ice hockey does in international hockey, you could theoretically load it up so your not so best pitchers are playing against teams that you know you're going to lose to anyways. Use Australia as an example. You're probably going to lose to Chinese Taipei. You could throw your worst guy on the roster versus Chinese Taipei and then still go to the quarterfinal, throw your ace out there, and you might go and surprise a USA just because you had a dude. You can't do that. The winner of this tournament is going to have multiple pitchers. You're going to have to line it up. And that's why I love it too, because you alluded to it in your response. You have to have depth if you want to win this tournament. Doesn't mean there's still not strategy about who you throw, when you throw them, who you hide them against, right? Like, if Japan and Chinese Taipei are playing tonight, they might not throw their best pitcher against each other because they know they might be meeting each other in the gold medal game. So there is still some cat and mouse game at that top end. But yeah, I agree with you. It really emphasizes depth. And you know that your national champion is the best, keyword, team to win this. And that's what's the beauty about international baseball is you got to check that ego out the door. It's all the team, not anything to do with the individual.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned pitching. I talk about it ad nauseum on broadcasts in these tournaments, and one that comes to mind, even on opening day, Juan Morales, the manager for Mexico, he's managed in this tournament 6 times, right? They won the bronze medal back in 2017. I personally think that this may be one of their best opportunities to get back to a medal competition, but he threw one of his best arms that he has on opening day against Australia, and maybe didn't need to, but he wanted to get him some work. Iker Cavillo is his name, and he knew that their two main threats in that pool, Japan and Chinese Taipei, they didn't play them until the last 2 days of the opening round, which meant that he knew that his best pitcher, or one of his best pitchers, could throw 45 pitches or less on opening day, only have to rest 2 days, and then would be available, depending on what had happened in those first 3 days, to be available against Japan or Chinese Taipei. That's what I love about these tournaments, is because it's day one. Mexico's playing a team that they know they should probably beat, but the wheels are already turning before the first pitch is thrown for a guy like Juan Morales. So it is a tournament that is quintessentially baseball for those reasons, because those game plans are put in place once the draw comes out. You know the 5 teams that you're playing, the order you're playing them in. You know what that path to a super round looks like. So I think it creates all kinds of conversation. People who listen to my broadcast are probably sick of me talking about pitch counts, but that's the story. When the manager is pulling strings, Matt O'Neill for Australia has been doing it this entire tournament, making sure that his pitchers don't throw more than 30 so that he has all hands on deck to try and win as many games as they possibly can. That's part of the story. That's part of the narrative in this tournament.
Now, that's the wriggle with this tournament because it is a junior baseball event. Now, if it was seniors and there was no pitch restrictions, you could theoretically, this wouldn't happen, but it does sometimes in a less extreme example that I'm going to reveal. I could throw Andrew Reynolds on Monday and you could throw 60 pitches. If you're feeling good on Tuesday, you could throw a 75 pitches. And if somehow you're feeling good on Wednesday, you could throw 100 pitches. Now, the human body is just not going to allow that, and it is quite frankly unsafe. My point is in the under 12s, there are pitch restrictions because they're junior baseballers, so there's mandated rest periods. And we won't bore you on this podcast about what that's about. If you want to be bored by that, listen to an Andrew Reynolds broadcast. He'll tell you all about the pitch restrictions. You're calling great games, by the way, man. I've really enjoyed listening to them, adding a lot of color, which leads me to my next point. You can watch it on the Game Time app. Most places around the world, that's gametime.sport. It's WBSC streaming platform. You can get a pretty affordable subscription and watch just all the tournament games. You can watch replays. It's an app that I'm quite enjoying a lot of. Now, further, the highlights are also posted on WBSC. You can get their daily recap with some photos on their website. So I pretty much want to just go with saying, yeah, go to WBSC for anything that you need in terms of all those standings. They do a good job of posting the different recaps. And I also recommend following the national bodies. So Baseball Czechia is doing a good job of that. I'm going to tip my hat to Baseball Australia, Team Australia Baseball. If you want team-specific content, that's where you can go and follow it. Rolsey, should I get into the standings before we go into our takeaways?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, standings after day 2 right now, and when you're listening to this, things have probably changed. In Group A, Japan, Mexico, Chinese Taipei are all 2-0. Australia, Cuba, and Germany are all 0-2. That almost feels set for who's going to the Super Round. In Group B, Korea 2-0, USA 2-0, Dominican Republic 1-1, and Panama are 1-1. Czechia and Republic of South Africa are 0-2. Group A kind of feels set. Like those teams look better than the others. Japan, Mexico, and Chinese Taipei. I was wondering if Cuba could make a run, but they've already had losses to 2 of those top teams in the top 3. So their path almost becomes impossible, although there's still a little bit of daylight for them to get through there. In Australia and Germany just don't look like they're the same quality as those top 3. In Group B, Korea and USA have picked up some key wins. They feel safe. The battle there looks like it's between Dominican and Panama. But Rolsey, I think the thing to remember with Group A is you can say, yeah, those top 3 teams, Japan, Mexico, and Chinese Taipei, are safe. But tonight, there's a big game between Japan and Chinese Taipei. And not only does this count in Group A, it also counts in the Super Round, meaning that if Japan lose to Chinese Taipei in this round, they also lose to them in the Super Round, and that affects their chances to get into the gold medal game, which is why this tournament is so good. And even though it feels like those top 3 are set, you're not just playing to go to the Super Round because these games count to the standings to get to the gold. That's why tonight is going to be so important.
Yeah, and you talked about there can be some cat and mouse, but it'll be interesting to see how each manager sort of handles that tonight. There can be some cat and mouse because if you're Japan or Chinese Taipei and you feel confident that you can win the 3 games in the Super Round against the other pool, then you're maybe not necessarily to potentially, you're not too wary of sacrificing a game, but baseball's funny. So those teams aren't necessarily going to sacrifice anything. Whether or not they throw their best guy is probably yet to be seen. The game that I've got my eye on today, and I'll actually call this game, is Dominican Republic versus Panama. So we will know a lot more about Group B by the time today is finished. And both of those 2 teams look very evenly matched. It's a massive rivalry. Essentially, the winner is in the driver's seat to go to the Super Round. And each of those 2 teams have brought quite a few supporters as well. It'll be on Diamond B, so the secondary field, which in some instances I like calling games on that field because I feel like you can feel the atmosphere a little bit more. The 2 sides are much closer together, and for games like this, it kind of reminds me of a United States-Mexico game that I called back in 2019 where Mexico essentially knocked the United States out of the Super Round. First ever time that the U.S. haven't won gold in the tournament, and they finished 7th, largely because of what Mexico did to them on the backfield. So I'm really looking forward to that game this afternoon because I think not only does it have that sort of Super Round implication where the winner is probably likely in with 2 more games to play, but I think it'll be a fantastic atmosphere, and I think it'll probably be one of the best games of the opening round due to how evenly matched they are. So I think there's plenty to look forward to on day 3.
Yeah, today's a good day. It's a good moving day, and I think you and I will jump on the pod probably, on Tuesday when the group stage wraps up and give us a little bit of a summary of how it played out and what the Super Round looks like, because we'll have seen the entire pitching staffs of all of them. By the way, quality players are playing in this, and you only have to look to what everyone's talking about in Major League Baseball to reference that. Nick Kurtz, who maybe just had the greatest game in MLB history. That's not an exaggeration. He was 6 for 6 with 4 home runs and 8 RBIs. He played for Team USA, among a lot of other stars, at this Under-12 World Cup. So it felt timely that a prominent Under-12 alumni did that in the MLB today. So when you tune into these games that Andrew Reynolds will be calling on GameTime.sport, you are going to get some quality opposition and players that you will say, hey, 10 years ago, I watched them play in an Under-12 World Cup.
Yeah, and I was even looking at some statistics yesterday from Major League Baseball. I don't have them pulled up in front of me, but like when you go through essentially all of the insane numbers that he put together, be it the extra base hits or the total bases that he had with the home runs, the total amount of hits, like the 5 or 6 superlatives when you go top to bottom with the home runs, the hits, the total bases. It was saying that no player in Major League history had ever done all of those 5 things in their career, and he did them in a single night, which is absurd, right? But that is it's crazy, the timeliness of him having that performance as well while this tournament is going on, because this U-12 tournament has always kind of tried to find that poster child of who is the guy that's gone. The U18s has it, the U23s has it, the U15s has it to an extent. But the U-12s has kind of needed that one player to be like, this is the guy who played in this tournament and went on to do big things. I don't know that we knew it was going to be Kurtz, but it's almost it's somewhat serendipitous that he had that performance yesterday, sort of just after opening day of the U-12 tournament. And yeah, I know the WBSC is stoked that that's happened because it's given them quite a bit of press in the United States.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that this tournament's only been going on for 10 years. So right now, you're only having 21, 22-year-olds break into the MLB now. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the next 5 years. All right, we're going to trade takeaways and then wrap things up and let you go call these games. Rolsey, I'll start us off. We're each going to give 2 takeaways. It's a pretty simple thing. And I've got 2 of them, but one of them is for a team that is a contender. And one of them is for a team that is honestly probably just happy to be there, but that means a lot to the team. And who I have actually been impressed by is Czechia. They are showing remarkable improvement on the national stage. Now, for those that have been living under a rock in the international baseball world, the Czech Republic qualified for the World Baseball Classic for the first time in 2023. They become a bit of a European powerhouse. They host Prague Baseball Week. We've talked about it on past podcasts. Now, this under-12 team showing some moxie. I feel like every time I open my phone and go to Instagram, WBSC has posted a highlight of Czechia playing some great baseball. They hit the first home run of the tournament. They had this wild back-and-forth roller coaster game. I think they ended up losing 14-8 to the Dominican Republic, who actually looked pretty good and like a contender. They had a lead in that game. They made some unbelievable defensive plays versus one of the tournament favorites in USA and only lost 6-0. They went the distance with USA and had a couple opportunities versus a team that probably is going to be in that gold medal game. USA, you'd expect them to be there because they always seem to be there at the under-12 level. I've just been wildly impressed by Czechia because it's kind of a symptom of how their baseball development is starting to roll over. And perhaps you're getting an early flow-on effect from kids that were 10 years old, watching a team in the World Baseball Classic, now putting on those country's colors and getting to play in the Under-12 World Cup. I've been actually really enjoying watching Czechia in this Under-12 World Cup.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to call them yet. I will in the next couple of days. It's interesting because following that United States game, I had a conversation with a couple of guys in the hotel, parents of USA players, and they were really complimentary of the way that Czechia played in that game. It was a 6-0 United States win, but by no means was it easy for the United States, sort of as it was the day prior in their opener against Panama. And they were saying, look, I didn't even know that Czechia played baseball. And I mean, this is why you and I are doing this podcast, right? So that we can try and spread the good word of what's happening internationally in this game that we all love. And we sat down and we had the conversation about Mark Kloop. We talked about their performance in the World Baseball Classic, and they were like, oh, yeah, I do remember that. And so them sort of coming into it, these parents came into it going, okay, it's game 2 of this tournament. We're playing Czechia. This is going to be a rollover. It's going to be a lay-down misere. And they were very complimentary of how well that team played. And I said, don't sleep on them in the next 5 or 10 years. The same thing that we've been talking about, because that development, I mean, there are programs that are, in the top 10 in the world that aren't developing as rapidly at the under 12 level as Czechia are, right? So they're coming for everybody. They didn't win the European qualifier. Germany did, oddly enough. They've done it the last 2 times in this tournament. But they are just slowly developing into this monster, and I think they are going to be the European powerhouse in the next 5 to 10 years. I think most people internationally would agree with you.
A quick shout out to 2 other teams that are kind of contending, or that are kind of happy to be there, I suppose. Australia and Germany, they're playing tonight. That's going to be a good game because both these teams would have circled each other on the calendar and said, hey, look, we're probably not making it to the super round, but we're playing for country pride. They're going to be going at each other tonight, and it will mean a lot in terms of placement towards the end of the standings. So tune into that game. Rolsey, what is your first takeaway?
Well, I think I alluded to it there at the top of the show, but this tournament for me, more so than any other, highlights how good the top baseball playing nations are at developing players early. This is a conversation that you and I have had many times. I've had it with people all across Australia and people internationally, is that it's not a talent thing with a lot of these quote-unquote lower-tier nations or teams maybe out of the top 5, out of the top 10. It's not necessarily a talent thing. I mean, you could talk about it with Czechia even. It's a reps thing. And when you see just how polished and how good teams like the United States, like Japan, like Korea, like Chinese Taipei are, it's because they have high-performance programs from the time they can start walking. You know what I mean? Essentially just after T-ball, and in, what in the United States and Australia would be coach, pitch, or pitching machine at 7, 8 years of age, they're already going through these high-performance programs, where in other countries it's just not the case. And so whenever we see teams sort of get closer and closer to the senior level, that's where we start to see, in a lot of ways, the teams that are at the top end of town come back to the pack, because that's where the talent can level out a little bit. And when we talk about countries like Australia, even some of the Latin American countries that are much better once they develop, at this age group, they're probably just not as good as the United States and these Asian countries, but it's just solely because of the amount of resources that they pull in to the development of young players. And we've been talking about it so much, probably in the last 10 years, that once the Australians get to, the age of 20, 21, 22, they have the baseball life of a 15-year-old at the United States or these Asian countries, right, in terms of the amount of reps that they have taken. And this tournament highlights that so much, because it's just rinse and repeat for these great baseball playing nations. All of us, they just show up and they have these studs across the diamond. And for me, it's like, oh, right. Well, that's why these teams are in the top 5. It's not that they're in the top 5 because they have the best players in the world. They do. But they identify those players when they're 8 years old, you know what I mean? Whereas in Australia, it took a guy like Travis Bazzano to go to Oregon State and sort of develop when he got there. If he had gone pro when he was 18, none of this happens because he didn't have the amount of baseball life, whereas he, as having the same talent, if he grew up in the United States, may have been a number 1 overall pick as an 18-year-old. That's the difference that I think this tournament highlights. It really just backs up a point and a talking point in a conversation that we've had multiple times over the last few years.
I think there's 2 things to highlight. Let's take a look at the example of Australia versus the USA, right? Like that Australian kid that's 11 years old, one, it's not baseball season right now. They play in the summer, and they are right now 4 months removed from a baseball season. So a lot of these kids aren't even in mid-season form. So that is a big difference for Australia. 2, they play in the summer season. Their junior season is 1 game a week. Now, they might play in a couple competitions, so they might get 2 games a week. But in the summer, as you've just said, those American kids, those Japanese kids, those Taiwanese kids, they are playing baseball 5-6 times a week, multiple games, multiple leagues, multiple programs. And 3, let's take a look at the population of the United States. How many kids that are under the age of 12 would they get to choose to be on their best 20 kids to be on the national team? You're probably over 1 million. Australia had 2,600 kids to choose from. There is not a scale there. Now, when you're a smaller nation, it doesn't mean you can't compete at the senior level, but it's all about the programs and moving you up the system. And that's what this is about for a lot of those smaller nations, is those Czechians, the Germans, the Australians. They want to get the kids the experience, get them in the program, because when you get to the World Baseball Classic, it's just about the best 9 that are on the field, right? You can level things out exactly as you said. Rolsey, my second point though is about a contender that I didn't think would be a contender. Now, this tournament's only ever been won by what? Two nations, right? Chinese Taipei and the Americans. Am I right in that? I think I'm right in that. So this tournament has only been won by two nations. So I'm looking at the contender, a contender in Mexico. Now, Mexico is looking really, really good right now. They're sitting 2-0. They're pitching really, really well. They have not allowed a hit in their first two games of the tournament so far. It has been incredible stuff from Mexico. You recognize to that kid, Iker, his name is, that pitched against Australia in the no-hitter. They backed that up the next day. They seem to have some bats. They've got a very experienced manager, and I think that this is as good a chance as any of those outside nations. You can talk about the big three, USA, Chinese Taipei, and of course, Japan, who are just a baseball powerhouse. But I think that the best chance right now for an outside shot team to win is going to be Mexico. And Mexico are looking really, really good with back-to-back no-hitters.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's hard to count a team out when they've gone out and thrown two consecutive no-hitters, right? So you'd be silly to not consider Mexico a legitimate contender to win this tournament. And I really enjoy watching Juan Morales not only manage the game, but the way that he manages a team of young players. There's a reason why this is his sixth World Cup, right? We see managers chop and change for national teams, especially at this level, year on year. So often, hardly ever do you see a manager manage two of these, whereas Juan Morales is managing his sixth. So I'm pretty high on Mexico as well. They're a fun team to watch. They're full of extra base hits. Their pitching obviously has been really good. So yeah, I would not argue with you that Mexico is certainly a contender. Look, I also think this is probably Japan's best opportunity to win this tournament. I talked about it at the top of the show that I think the good team, the gulf between the good teams and developing teams in this tournament is much wider than what it usually is, and it's led to kind of some of these lopsided results that we've had in the first couple of days. But in saying that, I think the parity between the teams at the top end of town in this tournament is probably there's more parity in those top teams being probably United States and the three Asian nations, I think, than what we've seen previously. Usually you come to these tournaments, you quickly can identify it's the United States and it's Chinese Taipei, and all you have to do is look at the historical results. Those are the only two nations that have ever won a gold medal in this tournament, right? So it's been easy to identify that those are usually the two best teams. I don't think that's the case in this tournament. I think there are 5 legitimate gold medal chances, which means that Japan probably has their best opportunity of winning it. I mean, they went down in 2019 at this venue and a gold medal game against Chinese Taipei, what was probably a game that they had a really good opportunity to win. But I just think because of the way that they play at this level, they're very similar to the way that Chinese Taipei play, except I think Japan have a lot more power. I think Japan have more power than Korea and Chinese Taipei do in this tournament. That's evidenced, by the first couple of games. Chinese Taipei, I think, has 15 hits, and one of those is for extra bases, right? Whereas Japan's hitting home runs, they're hitting doubles into the gap, all sorts of things, and I think their pitching is going to hold up. So, is it a case of the rich get richer and Japan finally tick off the one World Cup that they haven't won at the U-12 level? I think of any years of the last 10 years of this tournament, this being the 8th edition, dating back to, well, I guess now it's 14 years, technically dating back to 2011. I think this is probably Japan's best chance to win it, and I think the baseball world is going, come on, does Japan really need to win another one of these World Cups? They win them time and time again. But I really do think that things are aligning. And it reminds me of a U-23 World Cup final. I think it was back in 2018 in Colombia, where Mexico played Japan, and it was 0-0 in extra innings. I don't know that we're going to get that type of gold medal game, but the thought of Mexico and Japan playing each other, take nothing away from the rest of those teams, obviously, and I'm calling games. I don't have any bias. But I remember the contrasting styles of that game so vividly. And it was a U-23, so obviously a much different environment than what we're playing on here. But after having watched both of those two teams play, they've got the talent to go all the way. And, maybe some fans of international baseball are thirsting for something different than the United States or Chinese Taipei to win this tournament. So you saying Mexico's got a chance, I think it's Japan's best chance. Put those two teams together in a gold medal game on Championship Sunday next week. That'd be fine with me.
I think it also highlights the point about how good the top teams are, right? So like you said, Japan are trying to complete the set. They've won an under 15, they've won an under 18, 23, Premier 12, World Baseball Classic. They're looking for the under 12, but those top teams, man, they don't make mistakes. And that was exemplified last night when Australia played Chinese Taipei, right? Like Chinese Taipei had 7 hits and only 1 extra base hit during that time. But Australia walked 9 guys. They had a couple errors in the field, and Chinese Taipei won 13-0, right? Like if you give teams extra life, they are going to find ways to burn you, and that's what's kind of separating these top teams right now. How many times were you on the call last night where it was just a 1-run inning maybe, or a 2-run inning, or no runs on the board, and you said Australia 1 strike away from getting out of the inning, and then that ends up turning into a walk or a hit? These top teams just know how to execute and play that team style of baseball that makes it fun to watch. Rolsey, any more final thoughts before we let you get to the ballpark today to call a couple games?
No, just really looking forward to another good day of baseball. Happy the rain has stayed away too, by the way. There's been like 3 different typhoons converging on Taiwan at the same time, and luckily we've happened to get really big rainstorms overnight that hasn't affected play. It would be very rare if we get through one of these tournaments late July, early August in Taiwan with no rain delays. So knock on wood that continues. But yeah, really just looking forward to another good day of baseball. And like I said, really looking forward to that Dominican-Panama game this afternoon.
We will jump off. Rolsey and I will find some time, hopefully on that rain delay day, to break down what looks like the super round of the Under-12 World Cup later on. In the meantime, tune into all the WBSC channels, including GameTime.sport. We'll have Spoon back on Monday to talk a little bit more MLB. But Rolsey, have a good day and enjoy.
You too, buddy. Look forward to catching up.